Have you ever had that feeling, that specific kind of vertigo, where you look in the mirror and you have to ask, who is really looking back at me? It's a deeply human experience, right? This whole process of figuring out who we are. So today, let's dive into that very idea, this crucible where our identity gets forged.
It usually kicks in with this feeling. The person you've always known yourself to be suddenly doesn't feel real anymore. It feels like a role you're playing. All those values, those beliefs you just kind of inherited, you start wondering, are any of these actually mine? Or are they just a costume I've been wearing all along? And that is a super disorienting and honestly a really uncomfortable place to be.
All right, so here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to break this whole journey down. We'll start with that feeling of vertigo, then we'll look at the critical period of exploration you need to go through. After that, we'll see how our earliest relationships basically install the operating system for all of this work. Then we'll get to the real goal here, something called fidelity. And finally, we'll talk about why this job is, well, never really done.
Okay, so let's start with that phrase we all know, identity crisis. It actually comes from the psychologist Erikson, and he meant something very, very specific by it. It was a crucial turning point in our development.
And this distinction is so key. I mean, we throw the term identity crisis around for pretty much everything, right? A career change, a bad breakup. But for Erikson, it was something so much bigger. It wasn't just about questioning a decision. It was about the fundamental, heavy-lifting work of actually constructing a self, not just accepting the one you were handed.
This really gets to the heart of it. See, in Erikson's view, identity isn't a thing you just have, like blue eyes. It's an active achievement. It's this incredible process of taking all your life experiences up to that point, your ability to trust, your sense of independence, your skills, and weeding them all together into a self that feels real and consistent, no matter who you're with or what you're doing.
So if identity is something you have to achieve, how in the world do you do that? Well, Erikson said it requires a very special kind of time and space, a period he called the explorer's moratorium. Let's see what he meant by that.
He called it a psychosocial moratorium. You could just think of it as a developmental timeout. It's this window of time where society basically gives you a hall pass to experiment, to try on different jobs, different beliefs, different versions of yourself, all without the crushing pressure of having to lock it in for life. And this isn't about being lazy or indecisive. This is absolutely essential work.
But what happens if that timeout gets cut short, or maybe you don't really get one at all? Well, that's when you run into trouble. You get these three ways of kind of dodging the real work. With diffusion, you just feel lost, hollow. You can't commit to anything because nothing feels like the real you. Then there's foreclosure. That's when you just grab onto an identity someone else picked for you, your parents, your culture, just to avoid the anxiety of searching. And then there's negative identity. This one's sneaky. You define yourself by being the opposite of what's expected, but ironically, you're still letting the outside world define who you are.
And this all leads to a really big question, right? For some people, this whole period of not knowing is an exciting adventure. But for others, it's a terrifying, full-blown crisis. What makes the difference? Well, the answer goes way deeper, down into the psychological operating system we build when we're very, very young.
To get that, we have to pull in the work of another psychologist, John Bowlby. His incredible work on attachment theory gives us this amazing framework for understanding the foundation that our identity is built on.
And really, this is the whole ballgame. If you have a secure attachment style, you have this deep, baked-in feeling that you have a safe base to explore from. So yeah, not knowing is uncomfortable, but it doesn't feel like a threat to your very existence. But if your attachment is insecure, that same uncertainty feels like a dangerous freefall. And that creates this immense internal pressure to just grab onto any identity, anything at all, just to make the terrifying anxiety stop.
You can also think about it this way. To build a house, you need lumber and nails, right? Raw materials. Well, to build an identity, you need the psychological strengths you built in Erikson's earlier stages. You need the hope you learned as a baby to even believe there's a future worth exploring. You need the will you got as a toddler to know the difference between me and not me. You need the initiative of a little kid to just try stuff out. And you need the sense of competence you developed in school to feel like you actually have something valuable to offer the world.
Now, when all of these pieces fall into place, when you have that safe foundation to explore from, and you've got all those raw materials ready to go, the result is this amazing virtue that Erikson called fidelity. Fidelity is way more than just being loyal. It's the capacity to stick with commitments, to people, to values, to a purpose that you have freely chosen for yourself. It's this incredible consistency that comes from a deep personal conviction. It's not about being rigid, it's about knowing what you stand for because you actually did the hard work to figure it out.
And we have to be really clear. Fidelity is not the same thing as just compliance. If you believe something only because you were forced to or because you were never even shown another option, that's not fidelity. A commitment only has that genuine power when you've arrived at it through real exploration. That freedom to choose is what makes it meaningful.
And in the same way, we have to separate fidelity from simple rebellion. Remember that negative identity we talked about? Defining yourself just by being against something means you're still letting that other thing call the shots. True fidelity is about defining yourself based on what you have genuinely chosen for yourself.
But here is the final piece of the puzzle, and maybe the most important insight of all. This is not a one-and-done project that you check off your list when you're 20. The work of forging an identity comes back again and again throughout your entire life.
Think about it. Any major life change can throw you right back into that crucible. You change careers, you become a parent, a huge relationship ends, and each one of those moments forces you to ask, okay, who am I now? The good news is, every time that question comes back, you have another shot at doing the work, and this time you probably have a little more wisdom than you did the last time around.
So let's end with this. If you have ever felt that vertigo, that deep disorientation of not knowing who you are, it does not mean something is wrong with you. It is not a sign that you have failed. It is a sign that a vital, necessary developmental process is kicking into gear. It is evidence that you are growing.